everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Duet Reviews. My name is Jillian Robinson. I am the Associate Artistic Producer here at Cup of Hemlock Theatre, and today I am joined by the incredible Ryan Borochovitz, one of our co-artistic producers. Ryan, how are you doing today, pal?
I'm doing okay, Jill. How are you, pal?
I am also doing okay, pal. Okay, we're gonna end the pal. I feel like how just instinctual because we're talking about a super fun, colorful, friendly piece today. We are talking about Twisted Dog Theater's Unbelievably Believable. It is written and directed by Catherine Maleikova, and it stars three incredible performers, Katie Crompton, Gregory Katz-Nelson, and Sophie St. John. Again, we'll get into specifics down the line, but to kind of let everyone know why this episode is super special to me. So, Twisted Dog Theater was the children's theater company that I did Pin Pin the Explorer with last year. So, it was a show that I was a puppeteer for. I got to learn so many fun skills with real live puppets, with shadow puppets, more devised theater skills. So that's been a journey in my life for the last couple of years, is to be alongside this company. And for this show, I do have a tiny credit as song advisor. Catherine kind of brought me on in the preliminary steps of this process just to kind of give some input with the melodies and musicality of the piece, and then the team kind of took it from there. So I've been affiliated with Twisted Dog Theater, and again, Catherine and Ivan Melikov, who's the lighting designer for this, and Catherine and Ivan sort of helm the company together, and I've become great friends with both of them over the years too. So I'm really excited to spotlight this show and continually spotlight this company because it truly is phenomenal, above and beyond TYA here in Toronto. So yay, Ryan, I'm so excited. So before we go into it, pal, here at Cup of Hemlock, we do our usual icebreaker. Ryan, what is in your cup today?
So at the moment, I'm just drinking water, but I picked a very fun cup for this very fun show. So this is Chip from Beauty and the Beast. I've used this cup on the cup before. I chose this cup today, one, because we have a character in the show who's a little mouse who wears like a teacup as their outfit, and I thought it kind of looks a bit like Chip, that teacup from the show. I don't have one that's exactly the same as the one in the show. And it's also just an imaginative creature who comes to life due to the power of imagination in children's media, which felt very appropriate to this piece. So drinking water out of my good friend Chip today. How about you,
I love
pal?
that.
What are you drinking?
Yeah, there's a picture on the back of that said mouse.
Yes.
If for those of us watching on YouTube, it's so cute. The little costume. These are the protagonists. Again, we'll get into it, but both of these mice.
How about you?
Pivotal roles.
What's in your?
I am drinking out of my You Are My Penguin mug that actually Ryan purchased for me when I was in the middle of doing my Pin runs.
It was actually before, it was when you just got cast in the show,
right, just got
didn't know if
casted,
you weren't going to be Pin or the other animals yet, but you're the penguin to me.
Cute. Yeah. So this is a little penguin. Yeah. And I just have some water as well. It's been kind of a busy day prior to this recording, so hydration station to the max. I've got some backup water too. So the show that we were talking about today is Unbelievably Believable, Twisted Dog Theater. It is running at the Red Sandcastle Theater December 5th to the 15th. But knowing Twisted Dog, there may be future iterations of this piece, because in the past with Pin Pin, that was the case.
Same with Baron von Munchausen also.
Yes, also a Twisted Dog piece. As of now, the run is December 5th to the 15th, 2024. But like I said, there might be more down the line. Who knows?
They went all out on all of these puppets that they made. It would be a shame if it was only just a 10-day run. So hopefully, yes, there will be many happy tomorrows for this interesting show.
Yeah. So Ryan, why don't you chat about this interesting show? Give us a little recap.
Yeah, this is a tough show to synopsize. I feel like I've been saying that about a lot of shows lately when you and Mac throw this task to me to try to come up with a concise synopsis, non-spoiler, because even though there will be very little of this run left when this episode goes live, we do hope that it does get those other iterations, so we will start with non-spoiler and then get more into spoilers later in the episode with a clear demarcation of when that has begun. But yeah, I feel like I've had a lot of shows lately that have been difficult to do, and like this one especially seems difficult because in the best possible way. It goes all over the map. So we begin with two little mice who are our main central characters. Did they have proper names to your recollection, or they're
Um,
not credited as such in
no,
the
they're not
program?
credited as such, and I don't think, yeah, we
Yeah,
got actual names for them, which I'm okay with.
yeah. So we
I'm
have
okay if it's just Sophie and Gregory.
yes. So Sophie and Gregory, we will, as we will refer to them by their actors' names, are
hmm
these two little mice. One of them has a very active imagination. That's Sophie's character. They live inside a traffic light and they control with like a fun series of buttons that you can imagine may exist inside a traffic light. They're the ones who control the light. And Gregory's character is very diligent about doing his work. He has glasses, so you know he's the nerdy mouse. He's very diligent about doing his work and wants no nonsense interrupting it. But Sophie's character, who wears this teacup, as we discussed, and holds a little shell where she might get a call from the ocean, she's full of imagination. And when she begins to imagine interesting things, maybe some of them begin to appear in the world around them. She thinks that she has this pebble that is actually a dragon's egg and it'll hatch. And suddenly we get a dragon on stage. So, through brilliant visual puppetry, anything that you can imagine and anything that this character imagines
hmm
has the potential to show up in the plot of this piece.
hmm
And what it essentially is a feast of the imagination and a celebration of being imaginative, and as
Yeah.
all good children's theater does, and especially puppet theater that requires the imagination to suspend its disbelief and accept the fact that these inanimate objects that we see on stage are indeed living, breathing
hmm
creatures, characters with rich inner lives. Things do get very all over the place in this show. We are introduced to a lot of different characters, some of which are conjured by Sophie's character's imagination. Others are not. Most of them are embodied by some form of puppetry, but we also have very interesting projections used in
hmm
this show. Very fascinating physicality used by the performers. This is something that you know very well, having worked with Twisted Dog before, but it comes from a very classically trained European style of performance, both in the puppetry and just in the way that like this piece begins with a very well choreographed movement sequence at the beginning
hmm
that like it feels like something that's, I guess, I don't know if this is a frame of reference that people watching this will be able to connect to, but Slava Snow Show is
hmm
a piece of Russian theater that is very palatable for young audiences that I think is a good point of comparison. I know he has brought Slava has brought the show to Toronto a few times, so hopefully some people have caught that. But yeah, maybe Charlie Chaplin is a better
hmm
example. But like, yes, just you think like, very stylized physical comedy that we get like a lot of that in this piece. I could get more into the different characters and imaginative beings that we encounter in this piece, but I think for non-spoiler, I might leave the description there unless there's something important that you would like to add.
No, I think just like we said, Gregory plays the nerdy mouse who pushes the buttons, and then Sophia is the cute little imaginative mouse character there, and then Katie
Yes, of
Crompton,
course, who does all the
who
characters that I didn't want to mention yet, but yes,
exactly
but of
does
course
all
gets
the
addition.
all the characters. Katie's also a good friend of mine, did a show with Katie too, so cheers to Katie crushing all the other characters as well.
Which is kind of like
um
the role you had in Pin Pin, where you didn't play
yeah.
Pin Pin, but you were everyone else who Pin Pin encounters.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
just like for me, like general appraisal, sort of like right out the gate, speaking about the cast, I think the three of them were phenomenal. Like the chemistry between the three of them and creating this piece together, and knowing that kind of Twisted Dog does have a wonderful sort of collaborative flavor in their
Mhm.
process of doing these shows. And I've always said this on the Cup, is when you see a piece that kind of comes from collaboration, you can really see that infused in the chemistry that the cast has and the magic that they're creating together. So I thought it made those movement pieces and the interactions between the different puppets and the transitions between the different pieces of media. Like you said, there's production here, there's choreography, there's puppetry. I just thought the three of them together, it was like teamwork with a capital T. It was a very fluid, flowing, collaborative experience. The color palette of this
Mhm.
was just astonishing, just from the set pieces to a beautiful mural that is in the space. Again, I won't necessarily go into the details of that because we're not in spoiler alert yet, but I just thought between the set, the lighting cues, and the costuming, and even the puppets themselves, the projections, everything really was like imagination splattered on the stage. And I think again, it married really well to the poster design, which Twisted Dog always does a phenomenal job of their poster design. So there's a general appraisal too. Cyclical, colorful palette. That's what this piece exudes, you know?
I think the poster designer is credited in the program here, Katie Ledecky.
Okay, Katie Ledecky, yes.
Yes,
and
so
Valerie Capriva is also the illustrator too.
Okay, yes, I see. There's
both of them together. Yeah.
Yes, excellent work. Always lovely designs every time this company puts on a show.
Yeah, and then the puppets and everything, it look exactly like the 2D versions. You know, it's just like a really good vibe there. Also, I think the piece itself, kind of going back to your synopsis, playing right to the title, Unbelievably Believable, in a way, like to me, this piece had so many patchworks of inner child, you know, imagery, or like, you know, when we all still have these dreams where you wake up and you're like, what did I just dream? That kind of like, maybe it's not that it didn't make sense, but it's like patches or things pieced together, or moments that feel real, but they're encased in some sort of like magical vibe. I just feel like that's what this piece is. Again, we're not in spoiler zone because I was just about to like spoil something.
Should we wrap up the pre-spoiler soon because we're both itching to kind of get more specific?
Yeah, we are. But I guess I just want to say, like, general appraisal, I think the piece Unbelievably Believable, of it being like imagination and the workings of that and what that can be, that is what this piece was. Yeah.
Nice.
Do you have any other final things before?
I think we can go to spoiler towns because there's so much that happens in this show that, like, for us to get into it before the spoiler feels like it robs people the opportunity to be hit with it when they encounter it for the first time in the show. So we don't need to do that. If anybody's already seen the show or doesn't care about spoilers, you can continue watching onward. So
we're going to put the green light for spoiler zone. And I say green light because it's a traffic light is our little symbol today. As we mentioned in the synopsis, the two mice are working inside of a traffic light. So spoiler alert is on the traffic light. So
what was the thing you just wanted to, what was the thing you just wanted to spoil a moment ago? Let's start there.
Yeah. So at the end, we find basically that everything we've been watching is like a day in the life between these two mice, but a lot of the fantastical, unbelievable things that happen are conjured from the little mouse's brain or her thoughts or her aspirations. I would even argue you could go as far as even the other animals that they're encountering, or the stories that those animals are telling, or how those animals are reacting, could also be a part of the mouse's dream.
Oh, I assumed yes.
They could be these animals that like land on a trash can that's near the traffic light. Like it, for me, I think it could be literal animal encounters that these mice have every day, or it could be a dreamed up version of these animals that they encounter every day or that they see every day.
See, so that's interesting, like for a lot of reasons, because, well, reason number one is you're right. It kind of lives in this space where it oscillates between, is this real, is this imagined? I sort of read it all along because of just how fantastical so much of it is. And because we are set up very early on with the first imagination creature we meet is the dragon, Boppo, I forget the exact name of
I can't remember.
It's very dramaturgically strategic that we start with that, in my opinion, because that's one that we are explicitly told is something the little mouse is imagining, and then we see it. So I think that sets up this convention of you're going to see some crazy things and expect that it is this imagination has gone amok. But then we find we're post-spoiler now, so I think we could talk about the big twist is we are introduced to a small child who's also a small human child who's also played by Sophie. And her father, or actually was the child male or female coded? I don't actually specifically remember. I know Sophie,
it was male coded. The child was male coded, but I don't know if it was a father. Might have.
Oh, the apple cake guy. Oh, I assume. I thought he referred to the kid as son. Which makes me click.
But it could just.
I took that to be that this is the kid's actual father. I could be wrong about that. My favorite puppet of the whole show, I will say, is the kind man who may or may not be a parent, but it's definitely paternal, who runs an apple cake stand, and we see part of the set, and we could get more into the set in a moment, while Gregory's nerdy mouse is running the traffic light, it seems like Sophie's mouse is very close to this apple cake stand for like the whole most of the show. They never quite draw attention to what is the story with these apple cakes, what's going on there. And then we are introduced to this character whose
Mm-hmm.
body is played by Katie and whose voice is done by Gregory with this very fun big puppet head that, like I said, is my favorite puppet in the whole show. And just like, so yeah, like the choreography and gesture of this character was like just tickled my corn. I thought it was
Yeah.
so fun. It's a small sad child having their imagination encouraged by this older paternalistic figure, and
Hmm.
everything that we've seen this whole point kind of gets recast as these are the stories that this adult figure has told to this child and what the
Mm-hmm.
child's imagination has done with that raw material. So it's
Yes.
very much like Tommy Westfall's snow globe at the in the finale of Saint Elsewhere, if that's a frame of reference that anyone thinks is helpful.
Yeah.
So to your point about how literal is any of this, how much is
Mm-hmm.
the imagination? I think this solves that problem two ways
Mm-hmm.
by revealing that it's all a different character's imagination is where all this exists, but within the story being told in that imaginative space, maybe it is literal to the characters who are experiencing it. This is like
Yeah.
Inception,
Well,
basically, in these different ways.
I'm gonna
Please,
add another layer
please do. We must go deeper.
because the whole piece starts with Gregory, Katie, and Sophie doing this sort of like mimed choreography sequence that's repeated. There's gestures that it really does seem like capitals across the board an actor prepares. It's these performers that are getting into their bodies, that are finding repetition in their gestures, that are interacting with each other sometimes, that are sometimes not. And they're in their sort of like neutral grays and beiges. And then there's a book that one of them opens center stage. And I think it was Katie's character that like pulls, not that it doesn't really matter who it is, but one of them pulls something out of the book and the book closes. And then there's a moment where they're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then it's released into the space. And to me, again, talking about layers and framework, that's another frame because it's the actors coming into the space, moving their bodies and finding their own individual gestures, interacting with each other. And then they open this storybook, the thing that's rest on fairy tales, which there is in the program. Catherine does chat a bit about fairy tales. And then it's almost like the story is conjured from the book. And then we go into what this piece is. So is it the story of these two mice operating traffic light? And then it's the imagination of this mouse that is conjuring up all of these wonderful, unbelievably believable moments. Is it the story of the mice doing the traffic light? And then we also find in this fantastical world, there is a seagull that sings Christmas carols. There's a raccoon that charges people for, legal and illegal matters. Like, is this just the sort of crazed world that is inside the storybook? Or is this sort of going back to the little boy and the paternal figure and questioning, like, what are your dreams? What are your aspirations? Go for it. No, don't go for it. Is this that little boy's story? Part of that little boy's imagination is this mouse. And like, there's so many sort of like, there's a lot of depth you can explore in this, I find.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about the storybook kind of
Well, and
opening.
at the end, the actors they kind of do a movement sequence too. So it's sort of these like neutral actor like mime and gesturing that are bookend the piece. Like we kind of get introduced to these performers putting on the show, and then we exit as the performers that have put on this show. So to me, that was like a really magical layer too, because then it's also showing kids like theater and what is fantastical and how it really is limitless. And just like our imaginations should be, you don't know what you're going to see. All you do know is that these performers are going to be exuding art at you. And it's up to you to believe how much of it you want and how you want to believe it.
Yeah, and there might be a
Yeah.
big inflatable cat,
And there
and
is a big inflatable cat.
yeah, something I'll say about that is okay, lots of thoughts here. I love the storybook imagery that you're going with here because so much of this show, like until you get the revelation at the end, very close to the end, that oh, that there's this whole extra layer of everything you've seen exists in this child's imagination. I don't mean this like a major critique of the show or anything. It might sound a bit like it, but bear with me. That this whole show's a lot of, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then another thing happens. There's very little what I would call kind of like thematic or narrative cohesion, stringing all these things together. It's quite episodic, I guess, is the
Yeah.
kind of less critical way of putting it. And we're dealing with like these very bizarre puppets. We have this like raccoon. I forget, was he like a health inspector or a city inspector? But he had a clipboard or a
Yeah.
little notepad. When you see a puppet like that appear in this show, or the seagull that ate the advent calendar and therefore
Hmm.
sings Christmas carols involuntarily, a vibe that I get from this show is that it almost feels like this was like a whole series of children's books that existed before this show that then got squished into this one stage adaptation of all of those books,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, so like I know Elephant and Piggy, We Are in a Play, the
Hmm.
TYT Theater did a number of
Hmm.
years ago, based on the Mo Willems book series. It's like it's exactly that structure, that we have this whole series of adventures of Elephant and
Yeah.
Piggy, and each one is like maybe 10, 15 pages of a children's book, but you can put a bunch of them together for an episodic theatrical adventure. This feels like that we have our two like mice protagonists, and they've gone on various adventures over the years, and now here's a stage adaptation of not one of those adventures but all of those adventures. And
Yeah.
that's kind of like where a lot of these characters, so this storybook imagery I think is potent on those grounds. The other thing I'll say about it in this episodic nature is that each of these puppets, like because they're kind of like strange and like you don't know where any of it's going, I kind of get the sense that, and this is funny that I'm saying this because this company, Twisted Dog, they have all of their puppets custom made for their show. Like there's a lot of tender loving care that goes into it.
Hmm.
But the kind of puppets we're presented with in this show almost feel like they found them in like a big bin of pre-existing puppets from other things, and then they like pulled out, okay, we have a raccoon with a notepad, what are we going to do with this? And they like riff improved him into the story. And same
Mm.
with like, okay, we have a seagull, here's what like and like it's funny to think that these were all custom made for the show because it has that kind of
Yes.
big improv trunk from the attic kind of vibe to how does this character fit into this story. And
Which
that's
those aren't like there's shows that we grew up with like on TV, like those types of
well, I know,
shows,
and
you
it
know?
almost, and this show kind of feels like it inherited the props and puppets from a pre-existing show, and now yes, anded them into this show, and that's kind of
Hmm.
maybe where I'm also going with that like storybook energy of like this feels like maybe there's characters like this in like a Russian children's book that Catherine grew up with that sort of like planted itself in her imagination and then that snowballed itself into a whole other imaginative character, or are these like characters that Catherine drew as a small child that have sort of stuck with her in her life and have now made their way kind of into this show. And that feels very appropriate because this show is a child's imagination of a mouse's
Yeah.
imagination. So I don't
Yeah.
know, like I think where this maybe slightly veers into a very mild critique for me is that the two previous shows of this company, Pin Pin the Egg Explorer and The Adventures of Baron von Munchausen, both of those have more of a clear structure established early on. That Pin Pin hatches out of the egg, needs to find his parents, and he goes on this episodic adventure where he meets all these different animals, and each animal is funny and voiced by you and does their own kind of exciting thing. But but we know where we're going and we know that there's a goal. Pin Pin needs to find his parents. Munchausen is a little looser. It's based on a more familiar story, at least across various European diasporas. But we are presented with I've lived an extraordinary life and I'm going to tell you stories from that life. There's a scaffolding to it.
Yeah.
This one lacks that scaffolding. And I don't say that like a big problem, but it does kind of leave you a bit scratching your head at, okay, where is any of this going? We're presented with the mice, and we have a bit of a convention established with, okay, one of the mice is imaginative and you're going to see some weird things that come from the imagination. But we're lacking okay, well, why are we being presented about this and where is it going? And we get a very good answer to that at the end with the child, but you spend a long time, not that the show is particularly long, but it takes a while to get to not necessarily the resolution, but the thing that gives it all meaning. Does that make sense
Mhm.
of where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it does make sense, but I guess like I agree with you too. Sorry, my brain was also pivoting to like I found the director note in the program that when I talked about how Catherine
Mhm.
mentions about fairy tales
Yeah.
and mentions a couple things I want to just sorry, I'm totally
Please.
pivoting
Yeah,
from your
please.
point.
Sure.
I want to chat about the Torontonianness of this piece
Sure.
and Christmas time,
Yes.
because that's
Sure.
also peppered in to Catherine's sort of creation of this. So, first of all, Toronto, there's a mural that's actually painted at the Red Sandcastle of like the landscape of Toronto, and there's the CN Tower, etc. And then throughout the piece, there's little sort of inklings of knowing that this traffic light is at a crossing road in East Toronto. There's actually even the projection
Mhm.
of the mouse going on a journey to the ocean with the shell in tow, and
Mhm.
it's a map of Toronto,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
it's the neighbor, and it's Catherine's neighborhood too. So
And the neighborhood where Red Sandcastle is. It starts in
yes, in
Leslieville,
the
goes up
neighborhood.
Riverdale into Regent Park in that map.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it really
Yeah.
is rooted in this space, and I know that that was like important for Catherine to infuse in this piece. And then there's subtle mentionings of Christmas time, and it was actually kind of refreshing as to how little commercialized in your facedness of Christmas it was. It was kind
Mhm.
of just peppered in. Like the seagull was singing Christmas carols because it ingested an advent calendar,
Mhm.
because the show just happened to be taking place at Christmas time. It's like Die Hard, in your opinion. It takes place at Christmas time, but it has,
But it's not a
not
Christmas movie.
a Christmas movie. And I think that's
I'm
kind of,
gonna
it
get
was
so much hate for
refreshing.
that opinion, but yes.
But it's kind of refreshing with this show. It's like it's clear it is Christmas time. There's
Mhm.
little pepperings of it. There's like the snow
Mhm.
that's sent down at the end. But
I
again,
love.
it's not like the set is red and green and there's
Mhm.
tinsel everywhere. Like it's not Christmas, but it happens at Christmas time. So it really does add like a sprinkling of magic as
Mhm.
opposed to just it really driving the piece. And
I,
especially because it's like the time of the holidays, like, and especially in Toronto, there are activities to do, but there's so many different ways of celebrating this time of year. And like some folks don't celebrate, like it's not, I don't know. I just thought it was a really good sort of just, we're seeing this show in December. And I think that's part of, Catherine also taking stock of when the show is going up and
Mhm.
like sort of bringing that magic into the space, but not having it consume the piece and not having it deter this piece from having life outside of the Christmas season,
Yes.
too.
Yes, you can watch Die Hard any time of year. In fact, Die Hard premiered in the summer, the year that it came out. So it's not like, whereas like in my mind, a Christmas movie is one that you only watch during Christmas and would feel weird watching any other time. This show
Yeah,
definitely isn't like that.
definitely isn't.
And to what you're saying, like I think being in Toronto, which is a very diverse, multicultural, social setting, that this is sort of the perfect secularization of a holiday show that isn't, a lot of people and shows and marketing uses the language of it's not Christmas, it's the holidays, while still aesthetically being Christmas from head to toe. But like, oh, but we can't call it Christmas anymore because some people don't celebrate that, so it's the holidays. This show,
Right.
I think, finds a much better balance of it's not presenting itself as a big Christmas show. It's not
Mhm.
doing, even though I think all of the holiday stuff kind of is relatively Christmas related. It's not like you said, in your face about the Christmas stuff, but what it really does take from the essence of Christmas or the holidays is that feeling of magic. And that
Yes.
isn't, while you can say that maybe that has roots in some of the religiosity around Christmas
Mhm.
and wise men chasing a star or whatever. I don't know. I didn't grow up with Christmas, but but it's, I think that is a very secular feeling that is extracted from the atmosphere of Christmas more so than the
Yes.
actual, the content of Christmas, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I do want to take a time just to read. It's very short, but Catherine's playwright and director
Yeah,
note
please.
in
Sure.
here, because I do think again, it's like a bit of the heartbeat and soul of
Sure.
why this piece. So Catherine says, in each of my works and in this show, I celebrate my city, Toronto. I want audiences to feel my deep love and gratitude for the chance to live among these wonderful people and to create for the children and families of Toronto. This show is a love letter to Toronto, to the magic of the city at Christmas time, and to the everyday wonders that I've pondered since childhood. It's an answer to the question, what remains of a fairy tale after it's been told? So again, it kind of encapsulates all these different like layers and frameworks we've been brainstorming post viewing of the show too,
Yeah,
right?
that's really great imagery of the fairy tale after it's told, or the exact phrasing of that.
Yeah, the fairy. What remains of a fairy tale after it's been told?
Because that what she's describing is a dream, basically.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is it to describe your dream after you wake up from it? You remember little bits and parts of it,
Mm-hmm.
but not the whole thing. This show kind of has that energy to it of
Mm-hmm.
the potent images are what stick with you, and you want to tell those and share those with someone else. And maybe you won't have that narrative coherence holding it all together, but we cannibalize is probably not the best word for it, but we cannibalize the important parts of the fairy tales, the stories, the
Mm-hmm.
dreams, and we find ways to share those with others, even if it doesn't necessarily string itself together. Like
Yeah.
it is very surreal in that way, and like there is a pretty deep surrealist tradition that comes out of Russian and Eastern European art. I kind of
Yep.
do I want to call this like a kiddie version of a Vladimir Mayakovsky play? Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably not the best frame of reference, but yeah, maybe that's kind of what we're dealing with here. I don't know. Do you have more
But I
thoughts?
also think it's so encouraging of, especially with TYA works, and I've mentioned this on several of our episodes as well, of how important it is for the younger generations to be encouraged to create and
Mhm.
keep continuously indulging their inner child, even to adulthood. And again, having done a lot of TYA as a performer myself, it's imperative that the pieces that we show to these little, to the little tinies, to the kiddos, are fun and silly and weird, but also have like depth and morals. And it's just like, to me, viewing theater at that age is actually, I'm going to say it, more important than viewing theater as an adult,
Mhm.
because you're shown sort of like you're, in the words of Alphaba, unlimited. Like you are unlimited.
The one
I just
word of
saw Wicked, okay? It's right inside of me.
Alphaba.
But like, your imagination and your capacity to do what you want and to aspire to the dreams that you want to achieve is unlimited. Like, you decide that. So I think what's neat about this show too is just doing it. Like, if you have a dream or you have a snapshot of a character or a moment, do it. Like, just, and it's a classic thing that us artists, anytime we feel stuck or we feel, oh, I really want to do this, just do the thing, just do it, and again, I think as kids, like, just to really encourage that, to hit that home at a young age, of just put that creativity out in the world. And what it mean, and it's actually very surprising to a lot of folks that a lot of people are feeling or thinking the same things, or have the same shape of mind towards what you're thinking or feeling, right? It's the idea of just unbelievably believable. It's in the title. Like, what you think maybe is unbelievable is believable for someone else, or vice versa,
To your point about like, this is so important for the kids to see a show like this that does activate their imagination, invites them to imagine.
Yes.
What I thought was so nice after the show ended, and I'm sure you saw a lot of this during Pin Pin also, but the second it ended, the parents, and there were a lot of parents with young kids in the audience that we went to on opening night, the parents would turn to their kids and be like, "You like the show? Who was your favorite character?" Like, that's the first question every parent asks their kid, and it invites the kid to think about, "Oh yeah, uh, I like the seagull, yeah, and like,
Yeah, yeah.
and I like the raccoon, yeah, I like the apple cake
Yes.
guy, I like the apple cake guy, I like the big cat
Yeah.
inflatable." And yeah,
Sorry,
like,
Ryan, I didn't instantly ask, was the apple cake guy your favorite
you
character?
knew the apple cake. The
I
second
did.
he
I did
showed
know.
up, I was like,
Yep. Yeah, I don't think I looked at you in the moment I said, this is your favorite part,
Yeah,
isn't
you
it?
didn't have to ask. You could tell. But I love that we are you and I are obviously very familiar with, you see a show and you talk about it and you talk about what it makes you think
Mhm,
about, and
mhm,
how that's
mhm.
literally what we do on this show. But
Yeah.
this is the perfect show to instill that kind of, I don't even want to say analytical mindset, but reflexive mindset in the kids.
Yes.
It gives them a very easy thing to start thinking about, even if it's as simple as just which puppet did you like the most, which one made you laugh or did you think was fun. And it's not just inviting the kids to imagine, but it is inviting them to reflect and think about
Mhm.
what this art means to them, what they're going to take from it, which parts of the fairy tale will remain.
Yeah. And I just think too, this piece uses so many different installations of theater and
Mhm.
what performance can be. Like there is choreography, there is song, there are projections,
There's a rap song.
there's a rap song, exactly. There's visuals in regards to the set and the lighting. And I just feel like, again, hats off to Twisted Dog for adding everything that theater can be into one piece. So like you're saying, Ryan, like parents can ask for this reflection of characters, but they can also ask like, what did you like most about the show? Or like
Mhm.
what style of the show did, right? And a kid might be like, oh, I really liked the dancing, or I
Mhm.
really liked the singing, or I really liked the movie screen,
Mhm.
which they would say like are the projections. Yeah, again, it's just like a wonderful like patchwork of what performance and imagination can be at a young
Mhm.
age.
I love
And
that.
it's smart. Like the fact that you and I are adults saying like there could be multiple layers to this piece,
Mhm.
like kids could pick up on that as well,
Yeah. And
or
kids don't even have to pick up on that. Like we as
yes,
adults try to intellectualize it, like, okay, we know that
yes,
adult humans made
right.
decisions
The
that
kid, yeah.
compiled this, but the kids are happy to just receive it in ways that,
Yes, because
yeah.
again, we've passed the threshold of like art for art's sake or innocence, right? We're in the humdrum of adult life, meaning like this has to mean something, or what does it mean? Whereas
And
kids are kind of like, just this is fun,
yeah.
like things can just be fun and goofy and exploring. There doesn't have to be, it could be it's process versus product. Yeah, let's talk about the set and sort of like lighting. I do want to talk about the set because I
Yeah, yeah,
think
please.
again, having done a lot of pieces in the Red Sandcastle Theater in different orientations. Now, I believe it is just this one orientation of Red Sandcastle where it's like the smaller sort of setup. You have the
More
bathroom
rake
to the
seats, yeah.
yeah, more rake seats, bathroom to the left, backstage in the back, and how Twisted Dog sort of manipulated this small black box space. They made panels of buildings to exude obviously the Toronto neighborhood, sort of so to kind of like make the set 3D in a way. And then the traffic light was in the center. You had the apple cake stand off stage right. And then, like I said, there was the mural of Toronto on the side wall that kind of like brings you into the space. And then there was street sort of like knocks in the street. What are
Mhm.
those called? The little
Like
street lines, the lines on the
just
street.
like
I don't know why I
lines
called them
painted on it.
knocks, but sure.
Yeah, lines like the lines that are painted
um,
on a road, like the dividing lines
yeah,
of lanes. Yeah.
exactly. The lines painted on the roads. I don't know why I called them knocks, but sure. Anyways, they were shaped like a heart. The whole set was shaped like a heart. I don't know if anyone else picked that up, but that's the first thing that I saw was that this through the 3D of the buildings and how the street lines were sort of matched together, it shaped a heart. And again, the heartbeat of this for Catherine is celebrating the love that she has for her Torontonian neighborhood and the families, et cetera, showcasing the set in a heart dramaturgically. Chef's
Yeah.
kiss. I love that.
This is a love
Um,
letter to Toronto. It's a love letter to theater. It's a love letter to
yeah.
the imagination.
Yeah. And so you have these buildings that are like wooden panel. One of them is white so that it doubles as our projection screen, which was a super lovely sort of double usage of that space for sure. And then there were little tiny like windows hanging throughout as well. And I really liked that too, because I thought that showed so many things to me. You're going to be like, wow, Jill, I didn't think about all these ideas for the windows, but the fact that they were small windows, right? And our protagonists are tiny mice. I think that's
Mhm.
like we're getting the window into their lives. It's setting it up like that. The fact that the big set pieces were giant buildings, but then there were small windows, which looked like, to me, they looked like more like house residential windows. And I think to me, that screams Toronto, right? This
Mhm.
huge metropolitan city that's hustle bustle, financial. Everyone thinks corporate big city, but let's not forget there are tiny hovel neighborhoods, like tiny small neighborhoods sprinkled throughout this big metropolitan city that are beautifully filled with young families and,
Mhm.
you know, playing soccer on the street and whatever. So the tiny windows at the top, kind of like in contrast to the big buildings, kind of played that note for me. And I also just think it added like lovely texture to the whole piece too.
A lot of it
The
had like a
window of imagination, right? Or like the fact like you can even see it as like the glass ceiling, or like the idea of if you like look up, you can look through these windows and your imagination can, I don't know. There's a lot
yeah.
that I kind of took from those
Yeah,
set.
and a lot of the
Was
set had like a very storybook illustration kind of aesthetic to it that I think kind of, further corroborates a lot of what we talked about this
hmm
sort of like falling into the fairy tale or the storybook. I do want to make sure we are giving credit where it's due to the set
hmm
designer as we
hmm
discuss it. So the set design, there's two credited set designers. One is Natalie Bakulev, and the other is Laird McMurray. Natalie
Yes,
also was one of the two credited puppet designers in here as
right.
well. Excellent puppetry designed by Natalie and Dennis
Yep.
Gonoblin. So
Yes.
got to make sure
Yes.
that, yes, very excellent work across the board. All the very
Yeah.
talented artists who made this show happen.
Yeah. And again, to talk about the talented artists too, like how each of them, especially Gregory, did a lot of interaction with the projection screen itself. That was
Mhm.
an element of magic. Digitized performance meeting live performance beautifully with Twisted Dog. There is that relationship always present in all of their pieces of the physical human body interacting with a pixelated screen, and how that sort of adds another layer of fantasticalness. Just shout out to, again, Gregory does most of that interaction. So that's in my mind there. But just, yeah, the usage and playing of all of the puppets. And again, when I use this time to shout out Katie, because Katie did every other puppet aside from the mice pretty well. Gregory does the dragon, but for the bulk of every other character, it is Katie. And again, just beautiful execution of, you know, changing the dialects and voices of all the different characters and how they reacted with the puppets, and how sort of like the puppets energy was really endowed in themselves was again
Yeah.
chef's kiss. All three performers did a wonderful job of that. And then to shout out Sophie as well, I know Sophie is also credited as the choreographer. So again, the movement bookending the piece was phenomenal. Everybody was, you know, you could tell again that collaboration was the heartbeat of that element of this piece. Both mice are like our protagonists, but because I do feel like there is a little bit more weight on Sophie's shoulders, this kind of at the end, it is that her mouse's imagination. There had to be this like level of playfulness and the story coming from her as like a tendril of her throughout. And I thought, yeah, she was a really lovely like pillar in the piece.
Agreed on
Yeah.
all counts.
Should we cap it there, do we
Yeah,
think?
I feel like we've given a very good rinse
We've
of
our
all the different
imaginations
elements.
have been explored in
Yeah.
unpacking this piece even more than just seeing it. So again, this is Unbelievably Believable. It is a Twisted Dog Theater production happening at Red Sandcastle Theater, December 5th to the 15th, 2024. Hopefully we will see more life with this piece going forward, but it was directed and written by Catherine Maleikova, who is also the artistic director of the company. As I mentioned before, this company is near and dear to my heart, and I just look forward to seeing more of these old pieces in our neighborhoods across the city. Great. Grand. On that note, Ryan, as our little sign off, where can folks find and follow you?
No need to find and follow me specifically, but if you like me and my theater thoughts, most of them tend to live here on the Cup. That's Cup of Hemlock Theatre on YouTube, at COH Theater on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Cup of Hemlock Theater podcast in all the podcast places where you may or may not be listening or watching to this. We're everywhere you can find us somehow. How about you, Jill? Where can people find and follow you?
Yes, people can find and follow me on my artist Instagram account. It is Jillian.Robinson96. I post covers of songs, any projects upcoming or on the go. Keep your eyes peeled in the new year and see what sort of unbelievably believable creations maybe I come up with on my professional trajectory. Who knows?
Nice.
But yes, on that note, we are coming to the close of 2024. There's still amazing pieces of theater happening in our city. There will continue to be amazing pieces happening in 2025. I know here at the Cup, we're super excited to dive into the winter season of theater here in Toronto, but it is also a very busy time of year and lots of shindigs happening, whether it has to do with theater or family, et cetera, et cetera. And I think just encouraging folks, stay hydrated, get out there and socialize, but, keep your own social battery in mind, stay healthy, stay safe, happy holidays, and we'll see everyone on the next episode of The Cup. Cheers.